EMP Series Revolution, Episode 20. The sun was shining, and it was a pretty normal day in the small, quiet town. Levi Connolly sat on the bench on the train platform, observing the activity on Main Street. He was sharing a bag of sunflower seeds with a group of pigeons that were occupying a spot next to him on the platform. The peaceful silence was instantly interrupted by the loud whoosh of the Apache helicopter as it flew directly overhead. Then a second, and finally a third helicopter passed over. The three high-tech choppers landed in the middle of the yard on the military post. Captain Crawford, Lieutenant Sanders, and a contingent of soldiers stood ready to receive the principal, known only to Captain Crawford as Mr. K. As the three helicopters powered down, one six-man team disembarked from each of the two gunships that flew support for Mr. K's helicopter. Each team lined up in formation on either side of the lead bird. Once in place, four men, dressed in suits, got off the lead helicopter and took their place at the door as Mr. K stepped to the opening, pausing briefly. One of the six-man tactical teams headed into the building that housed Captain Crawford's command offices and went through every room. When they had secured the building, two men came back out and stood on each side of the entrance door. They signaled the leader of the second tactical team, which was now in place in various positions inside the compound. Now, with the entire facility locked down, the four suited men surrounded Mr. K and ushered him briskly to the door, leading into Captain Crawford's command office. Captain Crawford and his contingent followed behind them. Once inside the building, Crawford followed Mr. K and two of the suited men into his office. The remaining two men took positions at each side of the office door and stopped Lieutenant Saunders and the other soldiers from entering. Mr. K and Captain Crawford sat down at the long conference table, and Mr. K nodded to the two suited men, who in response walked out into the hallway and shut the door. Mr. K looked at Crawford and wasted no time getting into it with him. "Captain, these recent attacks on the power plants and the rail line were obviously coordinated. This is just the latest in a string of such attacks in your sector. This is unacceptable and it cannot continue." Crawford responded, "Yes, sir, I understand. We know who is responsible for them, and every measure is being taken to stop them." "Yes, Captain. Every measure except the one that actually does stop them. Why has the group responsible for these attacks not been apprehended yet?" Crawford answered, "Well, sir, it's complicated. These men have a lot of support here in the community, and—" Mr. K interrupted, "Crawford, I'm not looking for any excuses, and I am most certainly not interested in hearing the same old lame excuse regurgitated every time I am forced to come out here. And quite frankly, I don't want it to be necessary for me to have to come out here. You were given this mission because you were highly recommended by Congressman Holmes to fill the vacancy created by the death of Major Stillman. At this point, I am forced to question both my decision to put you here and the judgment of the congressman for endorsing you. You have run out of chances, and I am now taking these matters into my own hands. I am leaving a liaison here who you will answer directly to. As far as your troops are concerned, nothing changes. You are still in command at this post. I'm afraid that changing that at this point will serve only to further erode confidence in this mission." Then he leaned over the table and stared intensely into Crawford's eyes. "But, Captain, make no mistake about what I am telling you. You will answer to my man directly. You will not, I repeat, you will not make a single move without his direction. Is that clear, Captain?" Crawford responded, "Yes, sir, crystal clear." Mr. K looked toward the door and shouted, "Agent Corolla, come in, please." One of the four suited men that accompanied Mr. K walked into the room and stood behind him. "Captain Crawford, This is Special Agent Rico Corolla. He will be my eyes and my ears from this point forward. When you look at him, you are looking at me. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Crawford answered. Then Mr. K spoke again. "Rico, before I give you the floor, I just want to say that I have been here twice now. If it becomes necessary for me to return to this crap hole of a post a third time, that visit will not end well for either of you. That's all, gentlemen. Rico, you have the floor." With that, he stood and walked toward the door. One of the men in the hallway opened it, and Mr. K walked out. The 3 remaining suited men circled him and again ushered him quickly toward the helicopter. One of the 6-man tactical teams followed, and the 2 Apache gunships took off and flew away. The 2nd tactical team and the gunship they flew in on remained behind. Approximately 45 minutes earlier in the mountains, Carl Fairley emerged from the tent he used as a command post, shaving cream still covering half his face. He heard the choppers fly over, but had not made it out in time to see them. "That Apache gunship again?" he asked Greg, who was outside chopping wood when they flew over. "Yeah, 3 of them this time, Chief. Heading toward town." Carl paused as he pondered this. He knew that their being there had to be related to the attacks on the power plants. Roger rode into the camp and dismounted and tied off his horse. Carl looked at him. "Any sign of Hobbs?" he asked. Roger answered, "No, nothing. I checked his farm and in town. No sign of him anywhere. According to Levi, none of the watchers have seen him since the attacks, which means he hasn't been to town." Carl looked at Greg, then back at Roger. "Well, I was pretty sure he wouldn't go to Crawford. He's not stupid, and he's no rat either. Let me know as soon as he turns up." Roger nodded. "Did you see those choppers?" he asked Greg and Carl. Greg nodded, and Carl told them about the time a few weeks back when they first saw one fly in. "We got someone's attention for sure," Carl said. "Yeah, and from that kind of gear in today's world, I'd say a pretty important somebody too," Roger answered. Carl looked over into the horse corral and noticed that Zeb's horse was gone. "Zeb isn't back yet from the church?" Carl asked Greg. "No, not yet. He was riding out to pick up his brother. They're going to head over together. They're probably going to stay overnight. Today is Wednesday. They're going to attend church service tonight. Levi is going to attend also. He will debrief Zeb on everything the Watchers saw the last few days. Zach had to pick up some supplies Abigail and the girls needed. Levi was bringing them from town for her, and Zach will deliver them to her tomorrow." Carl rubbed his temples. "Okay, I think we should have Zeb and Levi start meeting somewhere else for the debriefings from now on. Crawford has watched the church in the past. After the latest attacks, it might be better to change things up a bit." Greg said, "Okay, Chief, I'll set it up, but the church really is the best cover spot. They're doing the debriefings on Sunday and Wednesday, so they coincide with the church service times. And Crawford has had men covering the road to the church in the past, and they've tried to follow Zeb as he left before. You know as well as I do that boy can lose anyone in those mountain trails. He knows the hills better than anyone. Heck, I know him pretty good myself, but I can't keep up with him when he doesn't want me to. Heck, that boy cut most of those trails. It's a maze in them woods. Nobody's going to follow him out of that church successfully." "I suppose that's true enough," said Carl. "Still, though, I think it's a good idea to change all of our routines up a bit. Let's stay a step ahead, okay?" "Okay, Chief," answered Greg. The next morning, Rico Corolla met with Captain Crawford and laid out his plans for dealing with the attacks from the rebels, as he called them. Mr. K met with the governor the other day. He got him to sign off on a directive to outlaw the possession and use of any and all semi-automatic weapons. Long guns, which are a single shot of any caliber, will still be legal to use for hunting and livestock management purposes only. Crawford looked at Rico and said, "That's going to go over like a lead balloon." Corolla smiled. "That's exactly the point. So far, these terrorists have been calling all the shots, doing all the pushing. Well, Captain, it's time we started pushing back. You heard Mr. K. Things have to turn, and we have to steer that turn. We're going to have to turn up the heat. I hope you're ready for what must be done." Crawford grimaced. "I hope so, too." Corolla said, "I had my man post a flyer with the order from the governor outlawing the semi-autos on the board in the trading post. That will serve as the public notice. From this point on, anyone carrying semi-autos will be arrested." Crawford chimed in, "Well, we need to spread the word first and give everyone a period of time to make sure they know about it." "Negative," said Corolla. "The posting on the bulletin board at the trading post is the notice. The arrests start today." He leaned in and spoke softer. "Look, Captain, I hear you, but we have to hit fast and hard. We only have a limited amount of time to produce results. We will go easy on whoever gets arrested in the first couple days. That will get the word around fast and will let everyone know we mean business. But, Captain, after those first few days, the penalties will be severe. Be ready for that." Crawford nodded, and there was a knock on the door. Crawford stood and opened the door. It was one of the operators that flew in yesterday with Rico and his team. "What is it, Lieutenant?" asked Crawford. Looking right past Captain Crawford and addressing Corolla directly, he answered, "Sir, I put 2 of my men on the road to watch the church as you ordered. We picked up 3 individuals about an hour ago as they were leaving the church property. We have them cuffed and bound and put them on the platform outside the camp for everyone to see as you ordered, sir." Corolla stood and walked toward the lieutenant. "Good work, Lieutenant. That didn't take long. Let them sit there a day or two to send a message, and then we'll have a hearing in a couple days. Give everyone a chance to see that things are changing around here." "Yes, sir. Sir, there is something you should know." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Well, sir, 2 of the prisoners are pretty young. One is 20, according to his ID, and the other claims to be 17. The third guy is a member of the church group. He lives and works at the church and was headed into town when we picked him up. The boys claim that they were going hunting, but they had a pack horse with them, loaded with supplies." Corolla paused and smiled. "Good. That's good. We can use it to our advantage. Show these backwoods locals we aren't playing any games." "Then," the lieutenant said, "that's not all, sir. They are the sons of Carl Fairley. Mr. Fairley is on our list of principal—" Corolla interrupted. "I know who Carl Fairley is, Lieutenant." "We'll be out there in 5 minutes. That's all, Lieutenant." "Yes, sir," he said as he saluted and exited the office. Rico Corolla stood silently for a moment. Captain Crawford watched him. Corolla began to smile and said to Crawford, "This could be just the break we need. Let's go down and interview our prisoners, Captain." Crawford nodded, and the 2 men walked out of the office.